Growing up, I didn't hear preaching about grace. We did sing Amazing Grace, but the emphasis was always on saved a wretch like me. As a teenage girl, I sat in the church pew, though, and I felt a call to full-time Christian service, as we termed it. But the only woman that I knew who was in that kind of service to the church was Lottie Moon, a Chinese missionary for whom we took an offering each year. And so I would say to myself, don't talk out loud about that call, because they might make you do that. And you're too selfish to give up mascara and too dumb to learn to speak Chinese. When I was a college student at UT, a friend invited me to First United Methodist Church, Austin, and there I heard grace preached. I also found Christian community, the high place of Holy Communion in my life, and I learned about faith working outside the doors of the church. Kathleen Jones, a Christian educator who supervised my work in youth ministry at the time, would periodically say to me, "Why don't you give up this foolish idea of teaching and become a United Methodist minister?" And I would say to her, "Do women really do that?" And I found out women do that in the United Methodist Church, and so I was able to follow my secret childhood call. Since then, I've had an amazing journey in ministry. I've served in many settings: an African American church, on a seminary staff in a foreign country where I have to admit they did speak English, as associate pastor with Jerry J. Smith, as a solo pastor, as a senior pastor, as a district superintendent, and I've served twice as co-pastor with my husband, John Wright. Wow. I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to follow my call in the United Methodist Church. And I am also so grateful for many mentors and friends and colleagues, both clergy and laity, who have taught me and loved me along the way. But it's not really my journey in ministry of which I'm proud. I'm proud of my two compassionate and courageous daughters. Rachel Wright and Elizabeth Wright were raised in Methodist parsonages by two pastors, and they still love the church. Rachel serves as Director of Global Missions for Terrytown and also as the CEO of Free Store Austin. And Reverend Elizabeth Wright is pastor of First Church Edinburgh. Now, by the grace of God, they will lead me in the way.
My name's Jack, and this is why I love BB so much. We were in the car, and on the road, and I asked BB, "Can we stop at Ted Toys and can we get something?" She said, "Sure." And so we did go there, and then I said, "Can we please get this Cobra?" And she said, "No." I said, "Please," but she said no because she hated snakes, and I think that was her worst animal, and so I said, "Please," and it's my favorite snake, it's my favorite animal, and she said, "Okay," and then and we paid for it and got in the car and hit the road home. Thanks. She's my favorite grandma, and I love her.
Okay. I met Barbara Ruth for the first time on a Sunday night in August in 1970. It was the first Sunday that I was back to work at First Church as Director of Christian Education after a 6-year exile in San Antonio. And when I came back, I found that there were lots of needs and not too many people willing to fill them. That Sunday night, I met Barbara, who was kind of hanging out with the youth, and afterward discovered that she was a college student, a UT student, who was actually willing and eager to become a junior high MYF sponsor. We stood on the sidewalk outside the education building on Colorado Street and talked, probably for an hour. And that was really a harbinger of things to come, because those talks on the sidewalk after meetings were repeated many times in the next few years. And sometimes they were at my house, which we always enjoyed. It didn't take long for me to realize that Barbara was creative, resourceful, intelligent, and responsible, and I was going nuts trying to take care of the youth as well as all the other things I had to do. And there came a day when I kind of stomped down the hall to Bob Tate's office and told him I didn't care where he would get the money or what he had to do to get it, but we had to hire a youth director, and that Barbara was the person. He complied with my request, and Barbara came to work here while finishing up her school. And I think it was on a trip to Six Flags with a junior high MYF that I said to her for the first time that I thought she ought to reconsider what I spoke of disrespectfully as the foolish notion of becoming a French teacher and get herself up to Perkins School of Theology to seminary. She did that, and even though she was gone, we kept in touch always and visited back and forth. While at Perkins, Barbara transformed the job that had been kind of a scheduler of the chapel for weddings into a substantive difference maker, in which she became director of community life, planning ways for students to be connected with each other and to have their lives enriched. And she even collected and published a pamphlet titled "Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Clergy Women, But Were Afraid to Ask." And all the contributions in that book had to be anonymous, because so many dreadful things had happened to clergy women in those days, usually at the hands of clergymen. But it showed her initiative and resourcefulness. She and John spent a year in England, but thankfully came back to our annual conference. I had known Barbara as a creative teacher and preacher, but I had not expected that she would become a leader in the annual conference, which she did. She served as registrar for the Board of Ordained Ministry, a very complicated, arduous, responsible task. She served on the Episcopal committee, the one that is the PPR committee for the bishop. She was a delegate to General Conference twice that I know of, and eventually served as Corpus Christi District Superintendent on the bishop's cabinet. When she came back to First Church, all the skills she had developed as pastor at the other churches and on the bishop's cabinet were brought to bear. Barbara, as I said, I knew she was creative and a people person mostly. What I had not realized was that she could become not only a capable administrator, but a visionary leader. And she saw things here that we couldn't quite see, that needed fixing, from staff arrangements, in which she took the lead by making a considerable sacrifice to make some changes, but also around the old building, especially the main building. Barbara loved that building and saw the places that we had kind of given up on and turned them into spots of beauty that showed that we cared about the home of our church family. Barbara is all about family. She loves her own family. She loves her church family. And one of the things that I have appreciated so much about her leadership here is the way, whether in meetings or in worship services, Barbara has the touch that reminds us that we are family, whether it's an occasion of confusion, uncertainty, even conflict, or a happy time. Barbara knows how to name it as a family occasion and draw us together, and that has been so important. Now the time comes for her retirement, and some of us in the church wish it had not come. We would like to see her here even longer, but we who know and love her can actually rejoice and be happy that she has chosen this freely and happily. She needs to rest, and I hope she will. And then I think she will have time to do what she has always done. I don't know how she managed to do it, but she has always made family her first priority. She will have time to do that in a different way, in a more relaxed and enjoyable way for her and for them. And we wish her well. She leaves her mark not only on our buildings, on our administrative plans, on our studies, but she leaves her mark on our hearts, and we are so grateful for that. We love you, Barbara.
My name is Kim Cabe. I'm a longtime member of the Southwest Texas Conference. I've known Barbara Ruth and John for 40 years. I know I don't look that old, neither does she, but we met at Perkins School of Theology, and I realized 40 years ago. And Barbara and John have been such good friends over the years. Barbara is competent, capable, caring, has the most integrity of anyone I know. She has always put the ministry first, and it managed, even doing that, to raise two daughters who love the church, as she said in her own video. Barbara and I were among the first wave of women clergy in this conference. She and John tell the story that when they graduated from Perkins, they went to Kentucky to speak to his Board of Ordained Ministry about the possibility of a clergy couple coming to Kentucky. And they had the conversation with what they thought then was the most liberal member of the Board of Ordained Ministry in the Kentucky Conference. And when they said, "How do you think a clergy couple would be received in Kentucky?" the answer was, "You will die a martyr's death 1,000 times. So their loss was our gain, and because of the openness of the Southwest Texas Conference, we were able to receive the gifts of these talented people for 40 years, and in that time have served faithfully and well so many churches. Barbara and I were on the cabinet together for several years, and I know her to be a person of strong will, strong integrity, and one of the things that I respect the most about Barbara is that she can and will do the hard things, and that's not universally true among all our colleagues, as you know. We enjoyed being on the cabinet together. We knew from the oral history of the cabinet in Southwest Texas that many of the appointments were made in the men's restroom. And so it was so good to have a colleague in the women's restroom to make our own version of appointments. And we had a really good time. It breaks my heart that she's retiring, leaving me, but she is well done, good and faithful servant. The other thing that you know about Barbara is that she has this great, dry sense of humor. And I can't miss the opportunity to share that she served on the Publishing House Board for many years, and since I'm in Nashville now, she would maybe come a day early or come and spend the night with me before the meeting the next day. And anyway, the funny part about that is that she left. We had a little yogurt for breakfast, and she went to her meeting, and I went to work. I come home in the evening, open my freezer, and there is her curling iron. So she put her curling iron in my freezer to cool it off and forgot it. And so, Barbara, I love you. I know you'll ace retirement as you've aced everything else. God bless you.
I was called by one of her friends, our mutual friend, Kathleen Jones, whom I had gone to college with and knew very well, and she said, Barbara Ruth is looking for an appointment, and she's coming back from England. Do you have something for me? I was a pastor of St. Andrew's United Methodist Church in San Antonio. And I said, oh, I don't have any place, I don't have any money, I don't have any place. About 2 days after that, my program director resigned to get married. She came and told me she was resigning to get married. And she said, and I thought to myself, oh, there's a place I've got to fill a place. So I called Kathleen and said, tell me how to get a hold of Barbara Ruth. And so I had been favorably impressed with her. And so she said, Kathleen gave me her telephone number in England. So I called her in England, long distance, which was unusual. And this was about, well, I can't remember what the date is, but 82 or 3, something like that, 83, I think. And so I called her and said I needed an associate pastor, and she couldn't come at annual conference. We knew that. She was coming after that, which was perfect. And so she came to work on the staff where I was the senior pastor, and she was the associate. And brought John and Rachel. Rachel was, 1 or 2 year old, something like that. And we worked together then until I left. She was still there. She stayed at St. Andrews when I left that appointment. But I counted as a special gift from God that I got to have to work with Barbara. And she and I were compatible. We're not alike, but we were compatible working together. I learned a lot from her. I've always championed the women in ministry. I had several worked on my staff at various places, a couple of associate pastors, and she's probably the best associate pastor I ever had. And I became a part of her family, and she became a part of my family, and still is. In fact, right before we were recording this, I just had a long conversation with her granddaughter and her oldest daughter, with Rachel and Esme. I just met them and we had a long conversation. But Barbara and her 2 daughters are special kind of people for me. I watched them grow up. I've known Lizzie since the first time I saw her was the day she was born. And I've been involved in some significant times in her life, like her baptism, and her recent wedding, Lizzie's recent wedding, and her ordination, and other kinds of important things like that. But Barbara Ruth is top of the crop as far as I'm concerned, and I'm more grateful than anybody will know that she's been in my life for these, 40 years, I guess now, something like that, pretty close to that. And her whole family, and I consider her not only my teacher, but she's almost like a daughter to me as far as I'm concerned. And that's the way I feel about her and her talent. I probably encouraged her in a lot of ways, and I'm glad that has come to a time when she can retire and play with her grandchildren a little bit more. She's a special gal, and I love her.
Hi, Barbara. It's so great to see you finally getting to come to your retirement and enjoy some time for yourself. I know you've given so much of yourself to others, and especially to me. I can't express how much have been blessed by you and your family. Y'all have been a support system for me for so long, all the way back in high school and on through college, and even helping me identify and discern my call to ministry. I just can't thank you enough for bringing me to what I'm doing today in ministry, and for giving your support and encouragement along the way during the difficult times, and just helping me realize that those difficult moments would pass, and that God still has a plan for my ministry. And I just thank you for your leadership and your mentorship in all of that, and just the way that you are such a blessing to others and often put them ahead of yourself, or often put them ahead of yourself, and just it's a pleasure to see how much the Lord has done through you and your ministry, and the lives that you have touched, and the friends that you've made along the way. I know just are beyond count at this point. So blessings on you and on whatever retirement holds for you.
My memories of Barbara go back to 1970 when my mother dragged me away from my home in San Antonio right before I was going to start school to come back to Austin, which was coming back for her, but not coming back for me. And so I was sort of terrified, and I didn't really know anyone. But my first friend, who was not my mommy, was Barbara Ruth. I remember a lot of people came to our house to welcome us, and it was very overwhelming for me. And I don't remember if Barbara was there or not, but I do remember that in times when I needed a surrogate mommy, and I think it was very hard for my mother and for me when we were first here, when she needed to be in meetings. And I had to be in childcare, or when I was sick. And there was a very notable time in about 1971 or 72 when I had a very, very unpleasant illness called Shigella. And Mother, of course, had to be at work, and it just went on and on. But Barbara came and stayed with me. And I was really scared because I don't think I'd ever been that sick before. But if Mommy couldn't be with me, then Barbara was the next best thing. And I remember I invited about 5 or 6 people to my 7th birthday party, which was not quite a year after we first moved back. And it was Mike McKee, who was not a bishop at that time, and Barbara Ruth, and my next door neighbors, the Sweets, and a little boy from down the street. And those were the only people I really wanted at the party. Those were my best friends. Barbara has been such, it's because of her that I've always kept my name. When I learned, when I was about 12, and Barbara and John were getting married, and she was keeping her name, that was so liberating for me, and I decided right then I was always going to keep my name, and I have. And when I was in my 20s, I did 1 year at seminary, and I had people coming up to me and saying, "You're going to be one of them lady preachers?" And that was so foreign to me, because I had seen since I was little bitty that women could be preachers, that women were called. And I had women leading my church, and so when Barbara came back to lead my church 5 years ago, it was such a gift, and it has been such a gift. And I'm so glad that she has retired from this church. It just seems very fitting and full circle. And she has helped us grow to where we need to be. And we are, of course, continually growing, but I think that Barbara has helped us to remember that we can't get complacent, and we always need to be reaching out to the community and reaching out to one another. So Barbara, we will miss you so much, but we are so glad we've had you, and we know you won't be a stranger. And have a wonderful, restful retirement full of books and grandchildren and daughters and sons-in-law, sisters and moms and everyone else. We love you.
Okay, well, first I just want to thank Barbara for her many years of ministry. She has empowered so many women in her trailblazing path and ministry in the church, and she continued to encourage women to enter ministry and then empowered them to take on leadership roles, and that was very meaningful for me. And I was one of those that was emboldened by her when she was my senior minister at Oak Hill. I heard her messages from the pulpit, that a lot of them very relevant to women, and I thought I need to do a little more than just sitting here in this pew. So I was emboldened. She put me on SPRC. I didn't really even know what that meant. I did find out, of course, and I observed her incredible administrative skills, where she listens, she hears problems, and she sets out to solve them. And she has done that here at First Church too. She spearheaded, of course, the renovation of Wesley Hall to make all of these spaces like this parlor, and the classrooms, the library, the sanctuary, the foyer, all more usable and pleasing to the members and to visitors. So she's always thinking of things, of how things can be better. And she's an amazing teacher. I have been in several of her classes. She listens. She's very honest and open and accepting. And of course she laughs. Everyone likes to make her laugh. She is not happy until everyone is engaged and participates, and that is an incredible talent. So, you know, most people think about retirement as a new phase of life and an end of work. And I hope that will be for Barbara, that she will be able to not be on 24/7 call, less stress, more travel, more leisure, coffee in the morning, time with Jack and with Esme. But it's been my experience that most people continue to do what has been really important to them in their life. And for Barbara, that has always been to make the world better and to make sure that the world will get to a place where everyone is treated equally. And that will be a great blessing for all of us. So here's to you, Barbara, and I love you.
So I'm Richard, and this is Esme, and Barbara is my mother-in-law and grandmother, so Esme. So I moved to Texas about 8 years ago, and I knew Rachel, but I didn't know anyone else in Texas. So I landed, and I met Barbara and John. You know, and Barbara was the kindest, nicest person. She was so friendly. She took me around, and you know, kind of invited me into her house, which was great. She introduced me to blizzards, which was awesome. And then I went back home, and then I came to visit again, and then over the years I've kind of gotten to really know her from that initial experience. You know, I've got to really know who she is and what she does and how she really acts, and of course, as all of you know, she is still the kindest, most wonderful person that I've ever met. She is so generous and so humble. Oh, it's okay. She is so kind to my kids, and she's so generous with us, with her time. She really listens to us and is so interested in our ideas. I mean, both Lizzie and Rachel are fantastic, and I know that they get so much of that from Barbara. And so I'm really, really hoping that Barbara has a wonderful retirement and you know, gets to enjoy herself and gets to travel and gets to spend time doing things that she really wants to do, because she really deserves it. She has worked so hard, and you know, is just a wonderful person. So we love you so much, and you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of you now that you're not working. Okay, I love you, Barbara. You say bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So I've been pretending that Barbara is not really retiring. Or maybe it's okay that she retires, but that she will still be right across the hall from me in her office whenever I need her. Because I bounce across the hallway quite often, asking her for advice, asking her to help me fill out a form, and all kinds of things like that. Sometimes just to talk, just to complain, or when I need a break. So I really, really am going to miss her not being there. She's been my supervisor for the past 5 years. But not just my supervisor. She's been my mentor, my friend, my confidant, my role model. And in many ways, she's become like a second mother. Barbara was with me when I got the call that my own mother had passed away. And she held me and just let me cry in her arms. And then, of course, there's the rest of her family that I have gotten to know, and what a blessing that has been. Her grandson, Jack, even just a few months ago, said something to me about being that I might as well be a part of their family. And that's exactly how I feel with Jack and Rachel and Lizzie and Richard and little Esme. And what's best of all is that I'm living on one side of the duplex that Rachel and Richard have bought, and they'll be living on the other side. So Barbara may not be across the hall from me in her office, but I know that she's going to be over there visiting them, and I'll get to see her then. So I'm very thankful for that. One thing that I'm going to miss most of all about Barbara is her laugh. Her laugh is contagious, and I'll be sitting at my computer and she's in her office, and her laugh fills the office and makes me smile and brings joy to whatever it is that I'm working on. So that laughter, it's not going to be the same around here without that. I've learned so much from Barbara, from her strength, from her wisdom. She's an amazing administrator. I go to her with budget questions, completing conference forms, and so much more. She's an amazing listener and a problem solver, and she's an absolutely amazing storyteller. The stories from her years of ministry have helped shape and form me here at the beginning of my own ministry. And we've made new stories. And I know there are more stories yet to come. So Barbara, I love you. I'm going to miss you. I thank you for all you've done for me, for all that you've encouraged me to do and helped me have confidence to do, and for all the things we've done together, like the mobile loaves and fishes runs, and measuring every office at the church. You are forever in my heart. The end.
Once I asked you, why are things so hard for me? And you said without even thinking about it, because you choose hard things. And so today, Mom, I want to say that I choose hard things because I learned it from you. I think that you taught me to choose hard things because they're almost always the right things. And I see you in all the years of ministry that I've gotten to witness, which is only 34 of the 40. I've seen you choose love and mercy and justice and all the things that bring people into right relationship with the world. And I'm so proud of you and so proud of your work and so proud to be yours. And even though your job isn't ending, I want to remind you that your work isn't done, so I can't wait to see what you do next. I love you.
Been thinking on what to say at the end of your ministry. I could say a lot about you, Barbara Ruth, as a mom and many other things, but when it comes to who you are as a pastor, I am one of the only people, there are two of us, who got to have you as a pastor for 18 years straight, and I am definitely one of the blessed people in the world for that. So I don't know if it's because I'm having to prepare and have preached on a lot of things, and I'm not going to preach at you in this, but we've been talking a lot about the Holy Spirit at church, and when I try to think on your time as a pastor and who you've been and how you express God, of course, I think many people would know how full of grace you are, how loving, and how not just loving, though, that grace is more than that, that the generosity of it, the all-encompassing nature of it, the uplifting nature of it, and the forgiving nature, that things are going to be okay and you're still going to be there. That is who you've been to many people. But my sermon at you, if I am honest, is, and about you, I guess I should say, is that if there were an aspect, a person of the Trinity within the, I guess what I would say is, at Esme's baptism, I joked that when we were going to each take a turn to say, in the name of the Father, or of the Son, or of the Holy Spirit, you, Dad, and I each got a role. I joked how I wanted to be the Holy Spirit, because that's the best one, even though most people would probably want to be the Jesus one. And that was my joke then. And it is a joke, because that is not who I would be in the midst of it, the Holy Spirit. You are the one who reminds me of the Holy Spirit, because the more I have delved into that mysterious part of who God is in preaching recently, and as I prepare again to speak to some youth this week about it, I was overwhelmed here at annual conference with the idea that often we again act like God the Father is this big grandfather, bearded guy who's very loving and warm, and Jesus is this buddy and this friend, and the Holy Spirit is this cute little bird that comes around. But in reality, of course, the Holy Spirit is how we know anything of who God is, and how we understand, how we feel, how we draw towards others, and how we celebrate who we are as a unique person. And you have been the one to bring that kind of understanding of God and of life and of grace to so many people. You are the one who helps them to know. You are the one who helps them understand both how they're drawn to other people and how they are this unique, wonderful being. And you are the one who dances like the Holy Spirit does over the waters at creation. And you are the little bird to the sparrow and the eagle and the beautiful dove of peace. And so I am so grateful that you were my first pastor, and that I got to be raised into my understanding of who God is, what grace is, all of that, all that I know, all that I understand, all that I am, and all that I love about others. It starts from you. And so I hope you, like the Holy Spirit, will feel a breath of life in this next phase, because you have been the one to breathe life into so many others' lives. So in this next time, breathe. Breathe for yourself, because the rest of us are going to keep doing what you've taught us to do in the meantime. I love you so much.
40 years in ministry, and 39 of them with me as your husband, 15 of them with me as your co-pastor. how have you ever survived all that? God only knows. You know, one time our daughter Rachel asked why things were so hard for her, and your answer was, because you choose to take the challenge of doing hard things. Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Like mother, like daughter, you have always chosen hard things in your ministry. You chose to be the first female white Perkins intern at a historically African-American congregation, Wesley Church, right here in Austin. You chose to go on an advanced internship to serve a circuit of 25 churches in the Forest of Dean, England, an area that some have compared to the Appalachia area in the eastern United States. When you were the first woman preacher in that male macho German community of Comfort, Texas, but by the end of your ministry there, you had made your way into the circle of good old boys, and you were the minister of choice to do a funeral for anyone who didn't have a church home. And by the way, you got those tight-fisted Germans to let go of enough money to buy a decent parsonage to replace that little 900 square foot house we had to live in. And then when you came to Oak Hill, you did what people said could not be done. You got an education building built in spite of the SOS impervious cover restrictions, even though you had to stand up to our beloved mayor at the time and had to go before the state legislature and get a waiver, get us grandfathered back to build that building. And when you became district superintendent in Corpus Christi, God only knows some of the hard decisions you had to make, many of which involved your own peers, guaranteed not to win you the popularity contest. And when we came here to First United Methodist Church, there was a financial downturn, and you had to make a tough decision to cut staff. But you led the way, as John Guest said, by setting yourself on fire and announcing that you were going to take a $25,000 cut in your own salary to make up the $200,000 difference. Barbara, you know, the buzzwords these days are keeping boundaries, and we're supposed to keep boundaries between our personal and professional life, but ministry and life just inevitably flow together, mix together, and I am so blessed that we have shared not only our personal life, but our professional ministries together. Together we have helped people celebrate their highest highs, and we have been with people in their lowest lows. We have gotten to watch each other lead people to discover the amazing unconditional love of God called grace. We've gotten to go places that other people don't get to go, like having tea in the personal apartment of the Speaker of the House of Commons, right there in the house of the West Tower of the Houses of Parliament on the Thames. You know, also, there have been so many times that you have saved me from myself, telling me not to say what I was going to say to someone, telling me not to send that email that I wanted to send, and you have saved so many of my congregations from me, telling me, you better cut 3 pages out of that 8-page sermon, or you better know when to cut it short, or you need a catchier sermon title. And you have always kept the focus on the big picture when if I had been left to my own devices, would have gotten completely muddled down into which prayer or confession to choose, or which hymn to choose, or something about the bulletin. You have reminded me always that when a person's loved one dies, there is nothing more important on my to-do list than to drop everything and go be with that person. I am not just a better pastor, I'm a better human being because of you, Barbara. I'm more compassionate, more courageous because of you. Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done. Well, I got through that without crying.